India launched 20 satellites, all in a single rocket, a single shot. It is a record number, certainly for the country's ambitious, and it is a pretty ambitious space program. The satellites on board were for a variety of countries, including, this is the actual launch, including the United States, Canada, Germany, Indonesia. India has been positioning itself as a key player in this very lucrative commercial space market. It's been positioning itself as an effective but low-cost operator. Yeah, you think of a low-cost airline? Low-cost rockets, why not? Dr. Carol Haswell is Senior Lecturer in Astrophysics at the Open University and joins us. Carol, great to have you in the studio. Listen, can I just start with this briefly? That's amazing. As a layman, I had no idea that you could launch multiple satellites. I mean, maybe 1, 2, or 3. 20? I mean, Russia has the record of 30.
Yeah, well, I think you have a launcher, and that has a certain capacity in volume and in mass that it can lift up into orbit. And then obviously it's just like packing. If you're going on a trip, you want to pack everything into the boot of your car. And so these satellites vary from one that's over 700 kilos to one that's 999 grams. So they've
grams?
Yes, so they've packed them in.
Wow, okay. So it's like bulk buying, isn't it? I'm assuming, obviously, it's cheaper for, if it's my satellite, right? It's cheaper that I go with a bunch of others and we all share the cost.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Can we talk about India? Because it is amazing. And maybe the uninitiated out there who haven't heard much about India's program, let's be frank, India's a wonderful country. You don't think India and you think space program, but you've got to start doing that now, right? This is very ambitious. This is a country that's had some very successful missions. One to Mars, a successful one to Mars. It's just launched a reusable, basically its own indigenous space shuttle. This is proving some pretty fierce competition, I would imagine, for certainly the Silicon Valley guys, right? Elon Musk, you've got Jeff Bezos from Amazon, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, India's been working, I think, very hard and very carefully towards this. And, they launched their first rocket in 1963. And they've been very clever, and they've worked, very carefully towards a well-specified goal. And their goal is to reduce the cost of launching satellites by a factor of 10.
Sorry to interrupt. Can I ask that? I'm really curious. How do they do it on the cheap? When we hear NASA and it's billions and billions, that Mars mission for India was $74 million.
Yeah, well, I think if you've got a fairly small and focused organisation and you're very clear about what your goal is, then everything that everybody's doing is working towards that goal. And if you think about NASA in the 1960s, what they did with the Apollo program was similar. It was very, very focused. And then NASA grew and became a much more complex organisation. And I think it's universally recognised that it became less efficient, less good at making cost-effective decisions. And I think the Indian operation is still small and lean and focused. Yeah. So, they're running rings around the more established space agencies that we would think of.
Saturn is the next place. No. Can I ask you this? How much of an impact does something like this, a program like this for India, I mean, it makes money? I mean, how much money is generated for the economy? And does this help a country like its GDP to grow?
Yeah, well, I think India's had a policy of trying to get a lot of highly educated, technical people, and obviously this helps with that. The satellites that they're launching, they're charging for this, so they're making a direct profit. And some of the payload that they're taking up there are owned by commercial companies who are then going to be selling the imaging that they're taking in their Earth observations. And, and some of it will be imaging that will be sold to commercial buyers to, basically spy on the competition.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I've got to wrap it up. But who was it, Google or Amazon? Google.
Yeah, one of the satellites belongs to Google.
Google. Okay.
And I found very little about that one.
No, they keep that kind of hush-hush. Not any hush-hush anymore. Google, you've got a satellite up there. We know it. Follow me on Twitter. Tweet me, I'll tweet you back. You can get me at BBC Aaron.
India has sent 20 satellites on a single rocket into space in its biggest launch ever. 17 of them were foreign, including from the U.S., Canada, Germany, and Indonesia. Most will be used to observe and measure the Earth's atmosphere. In 2008, India launched 10 satellites on one rocket, setting a world record, but that has since been broken by NASA and then by Russia. Now, since the U.S. space agency NASA stopped its shuttle program 5 years ago, engineers in India have been among those at the forefront of designing a reusable spacecraft. India is offering low-cost options to put satellites and other equipment into orbit. Its first miniature prototype shuttle was launched last month. It cost around $14 million, while U.S. private company SpaceX charges $61 million for a launch of its Falcon 9 rocket. India became the first Asian nation to successfully place a satellite into orbit around Mars. That was 2 years ago. The Mangalyaan robotics probe cost $74 million. That is 1/9 of the $671 million price tag for NASA's latest Maven Mars mission. But India's $1.2 billion space budget is still controversial in a country where 3/4 of the population earns less than $80 a month. Joining us now is Pallav Bagla. He is science editor with the Indian news channel NDTV. He joins us via Skype from New Delhi, and we very much appreciate your time. Put this launch in some sort of perspective for us.
This particular launch was very significant for India. It was the 35th consecutively successful launch of India's smaller rocket, the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, and it carried 20 satellites in one go in orbit. It is like dropping one by one school children from a bus which is flying at a very high velocity in space. It's a complex maneuver. It's a tricky maneuver because you don't want the mothership and the babies to collide with each other. And the Indian Space Research Organization did it gloriously in its 35th consecutively successful launch. It was a great day for the Indian Space Agency.
I love your analogy there. That's pretty vivid. We can kind of visualize that. So why is India such a key destination for launching these satellites?
Very straightforward. Costs. India offers launch costs which are 50% cheaper than anybody else in the world. So if SpaceX or Blue Shepard or any Ariane Space or NASA can do it at $100, India is willing to do it at $50. So that is the reason why you see big companies now coming to India. In this particular launch, the significance was that there is a satellite by Google which has been launched. And Google is a rich company and they would opt for the very best. And they opted to launch from the Indian Space Research Organization. Only shows that there's reliability and bankability on the Indian rocket.
But as I said, as we were leading up to you, that this is controversial to have to spend this much money in a program like this in a country that is relatively poor. Do the people benefit from this in any way?
Oh, immensely. See, the Indian Space Research Program is directed mainly for benefits of the Indian people. If Indian fishermen need to benefit, they benefit through getting to the right fishing zones. Indian farmers benefit by correct forecasts on when rains would arrive thanks to satellites. Whatever Indian news and entertainment industry does can be done only using satellites. So the Indian people are benefiting very much by the frugal and low-cost investment which India has done in its space program. India invests just over a little over $1 billion every year in space, and it gets much more by way of benefits for governance and for infrastructure development for the country using space technology.
Mr. Pallav Bagla, thank you so much for your insight on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.